The relics of remarkable ancient accomplishments can be found all across the planet, strewn over deserts, concealed beneath rainforests, and resting on desolate, wind-swept plains. Huge walls, towering megaliths, and enormous tombs constructed by people we can no longer identify. Thousands of years later, these blocks, which weigh hundreds or even thousands of tons, are still respected for the accuracy with which they were formed and put together. However, in many instances, we are unaware of their creators, their motivations, or the antiquated methods by which they were constructed. The accepted timeline is called into doubt by several that appear to have been built long before the cultures we usually attribute major engineering achievements. These locations are not merely artifacts, they are riddles left by societies whose capacities still far above what we would have thought possible for their time. However, there is more to this enigma, one reverberated in the earliest folktales of almost every civilization on the planet, reminiscent of a massive flood. The idea recurs in both Mesopotamia's Epic of Gilgamesh, in which the gods send a flood to wipe out humanity, and North America's Hopi, who tell of waters that washed away a corrupt world. Legends from ancient China describe how the land was reshaped by destructive floods. There are some parallels between the dramatic stories that Aboriginal Australians tell of the waters rising to split their lands. These narratives, which come from cultures divided by mountains, seas, and millennia, are remarkably consistent. According to some scientists, they are recollections of actual occurrences, such as the rise in sea level and the geological upheavals that occurred between 12,000 and 8,000 years ago at the conclusion of the last ice age. Others point out that their Great Flood is dated to roughly 2300 BC, which is much later in many traditions, including the biblical story. That later time frame, if accurate, suggests something very terrible that has the capacity to wipe out entire civilizations.
Furthermore, those civilizations might have been more interconnected than we realize. Megaliths from all across the world are strikingly similar in terms of size, design, and building methods, even if their constructors were separated by great distances. Could this indicate a once dominant megalithic construction culture over the world? One that was nearly completely erased from history by a devastating flood. Come along with us as we explore some of these intriguing pre-flood megaliths in an effort to uncover the wisdom and intentions that its creators left preserved in stone. As with all of our videos, keep in mind that the images are not required. So sit back, settle down, and let the outer world vanish for a little, whether you're watching intently or just listening. We'll investigate the likelihood that the enormous walls, monuments, tombs, and engravings that we now discover are more than just ruins. They might be the last remnants of sophisticated societies' communications that were erased in a single catastrophic event. Hidden away in Japan's peaceful forested hillsides are two historic structures whose provenance is as enigmatic as their appearance. These mysterious constructions, the Ishi-no-Hoden and Masuda no Una, are among the most fascinating megalithic riddles in Japan. These amazing Japanese stones are rarely featured in mainstream history books or documentaries, in contrast to more well-known structures such as Stonehenge or the pyramids of Egypt. But their existence calls into question accepted beliefs about the technological prowess of early civilizations. Let's start by exploring the captivating Ishi-no-Hoden, also known as Floating Stone in Hyogo Prefecture. This massive granite rock instantly draws notice upon first sight. Even gravity appears to defy it. The stone appears to float lightly above its base as it is suspended above a tiny pool of water. The monolith's dimensions are approximately 6.4 by 7.3 by 5.45 meters, and its sheer weight is estimated to be 500 tons. For comparison, this one stone weighs about the same as 3 jumbo jets. However, the enormous granite seems to be beautifully balanced, with only a tiny center pillar, which is deftly hidden by the surrounding water. The accuracy and skill required become even more perplexing upon closer examination. The Ishi-no-Hoden's surfaces are incredibly smooth, with clean-cut angles and sophisticated tools that, even by today's standards, would require meticulous planning and sophisticated skills, according to stonemasons. Historians and archaeologists have had difficulty providing a convincing explanation for how ancient humans used crude tools to balance and cut such a large stone.
Furthermore, neither the monument's actual function nor the identities of its creators are made evident by any historical documents or archaeological relics. Legends from the area only serve to increase the enigma surrounding the Ishi-no-Hoden. The stone was not made by common people, according to legend that has been passed down through the generations. Rather, the tales allude to highly developed entities or deities that descended from the sky and used mystical means to mold the stone. Even though these stories are fantastical, they beg the fascinating question of whether they contain traces of historical fact, maybe signifying contact with a highly developed society whose presence has since vanished from historical memory. Masuda no Iwon, often called the rock ship of Masuda, is another nearby ancient megalith that is as fascinating and enigmatic. This enormous granite stone, which is situated in Asaka, Nara Prefecture, is cut into an unusual and unique shape that is difficult to classify. The rock, which is roughly 11 meters long, 8 meters wide, and almost 5 meters tall, is a striking sight in the tranquil countryside of Japan. The exact reason why Masuda Mawinofoni is still a mystery. The rock ship has no obvious explanation, in contrast to other ancient monuments found all over the world that are often connected to temples, tombs, or astronomical observatories. Rectangular indentations and symmetrical grooves are meticulously carved into the granite surface. Some academics suggest that these carvings might have had a useful purpose, such as acting as anchors or foundations for a larger construction that has now been lost to time. Others suggest that they may have served as symbolic markers or ceremonial rites.
However, none of these hypotheses have conclusive archaeological support.
Therefore, the actual function of Masuda no Iwane and Ishi no Hoden remains a historical enigma. The lack of surrounding stone chips or carving detritus, which usually accompany extensive stonework, is even more perplexing. Because of this dearth of proof, some scholars have hypothesized that the stone might have been brought here after being carved. Considering its enormous weight and the rudimentary technology purportedly accessible at the time, this concept has its own perplexing ramifications. It's interesting to note that the region around Masuda no Iwane and Ishi no Hoden is rich in mythology and ancient folklore that alludes to highly developed creatures or strong civilizations that vanished in the past. According to Japanese folklore, these ancient societies possessed exceptional knowledge and skills that are much beyond what is currently understood. Great teachers are said to have come from the sea or to have dropped from the sky, teaching knowledge of construction, astronomy, agriculture, and medicine, only to inexplicably disappear in a cataclysmic occurrence that is sometimes compared to a disastrous tsunami or a huge flood. In fact, there are many flood myths in Japan that are similar to those around the world. The Kojiki, an ancient Japanese manuscript published around 712 AD, contains one of the most captivating stories. It describes a time of turmoil during which the gods sent strong storms and floods to purify and restructure the earth. These tales have remarkable similarities to other flood myths around the world, suggesting a common memory of terrible occurrences. Intriguing possibilities arise when we examine these Japanese megaliths within the framework of such tales. Could the highly developed building methods seen in these stones suggest that the builders were part of an ancient society that was either destroyed or severely disturbed by flooding? If true, this would fit in with stories about worldwide floods, implying that there was a culture in ancient Japan whose knowledge and technology vanished suddenly. The cultural phenomenon of lost technology, which is demonstrated by comparable stone monuments all around the world, adds to this mystery. Masuda no Iwawune and Ishi no Hoden both resemble other unexplained ancient monuments located all over the world. Similar patterns of exact stone cutting and careful placement can be seen in structures that are difficult to explain. A broad, ancient grasp of megalithic architecture is suggested by shared techniques and forms found in everything from the enigmatic split stones of the Arabian deserts to the enormous polygonal walls of South America. Most people usually think of well-known locations like the Greek temples or the Egyptian pyramids when they think about ancient ruins. However, walls made of enormous stones can be found tucked away in the Peruvian mountains and under the seas off the coast of Syria. With an almost unnerving perfection, each one was painstakingly sculpted, manipulated, and placed. These buildings are more than just striking. They are quite perplexing. Long ago, the individuals who constructed them disappeared, leaving no written documentation or justifications. Modern engineers are still in awe of their artistry today, wondering how ancient hands were able to do such things. Let's get started. Just outside of the vibrant contemporary Peruvian city of Cusco, high in the Andes Mountains, the towering stone complex known as Sacsayhuaman, an old fortress that dates back hundreds or even thousands of years, is located here. It's simple to underestimate how remarkable this place is at first glance, but if you take a closer look, the real wonder soon becomes apparent. Massive limestone boulders, some weighing over 200 tons, roughly the weight of 120 typical cars, were used to build the fortress's walls. The accuracy, not simply the size, is what's really amazing. Without the use of cement or mortar, each stone is fitted against its neighbors in such a precise manner that not even a single piece of paper can fit into the spaces between them. The stones wind elegantly along the mountainside, following gently curved patterns in addition to locking firmly together. Certain stones contain up to 12 different angles that are perfectly carved to match the distinctive shapes of their neighbors. It's difficult to avoid wondering how ancient builders, employing ostensibly rudimentary equipment made of stone and bronze, were able to create something that would be intimidating to modern machines when confronted with these massive stones. Archaeologists concur that it would have taken a great deal of work to move and position these enormous stones. However, even experienced researchers frequently shrug and acknowledge that it's somewhat of a mystery when asked how this was accomplished. Exciting explanations can be found in local folklore. According to certain legends, giants with superhuman strength or mystical abilities moved and carved these stones. Other legends that have been passed down over the ages tell of ancient societies possessing skills that today appear nearly legendary. Those with the ability to momentarily ease the manipulation of stones into perfect alignment by making them lighter or softer. Ollantaytambo is another magnificent Peruvian site located a few hundred kilometers northwest of Sacayén. This location, which is known as the Wall of the Six Monoliths, is tucked away in the Holy Valley. Another amazing example of ancient engineering. Standing tall and arranged side by side are these 6 enormous granite stones. Each massive monolith weighs up to 50 tons each, is carved out of solid granite, and is fitted with incredible precision. Here, however, the mystery becomes even more complex. These blocks of granite did not come from the immediate area. The origins instead are traced to a quarry on a far-off mountain about 7 kilometers away, across rough terrain and in a deep valley. Each stone would have needed to be moved across rivers and down steep slopes before being hauled uphill to its final resting place. The task would be extremely challenging, even with our sophisticated logistics and heavy machines today. Naturally, the question comes up: how did ancient societies accomplish this enormous undertaking?
Once more, the Quechua people of the area preserve rich traditions about a time when creatures known as the Veracoches helped their forefathers. A mythical society of sage men who came, imparted sophisticated knowledge in fields like architecture and agriculture, and then vanished without warning. These customs claim that the large stones were moved by unexplained, potentially paranormal methods. These local tales demonstrate sincere wonder at their ancestors' extraordinary skills, even though contemporary science may reject such explanations. However, there are other old megalithic walls in South America that are fascinating to contemporary viewers. Around the world, the ancient island city of Arwad, located close to Syria on the Mediterranean coast, hides another enigmatic building. Arwad's origins date back to the Phoenician period, which was at least 4,000 years ago, making it one of the oldest continually inhabited settlements in history. There is something genuinely intriguing beneath the shallow seas that surround the island. A large limestone slab that was part of a partially submerged megalithic wall. Large stones that are precisely and stylistically similar to those found in Peru are discovered during diving excursions. They are securely fastened together without the use of binding mortar. The fact that this wall is currently underwater, behind many meters of the Mediterranean Sea, is very fascinating. Its location beneath the waters suggests that the sea level has dramatically risen since it was built, which may be related to the worldwide floods that ancient civilizations around the world documented. Surprisingly little direct description of this subterranean construction has been provided by the Phoenicians themselves, who were skilled traders and seafarers. Local legends that have survived on Arwat, however, hazily describe once thriving civilizations that abruptly disappeared following devastating floods. The idea of an ancient tribe constructing this building above water without realizing the significant changes their city would undergo is both intriguing and a little unsettling. Even while Sakai Huaman, Olentai Tambo, and Arwad are all remarkable walls in and of themselves, their commonalities pique interest. Each demonstrates an advanced knowledge of mathematics, physics, and engineering by using enormous stones that have been precisely cut and assembled without the need of mortar. The myths told by the cultures around these walls are equally fascinating. They repeatedly describe civilizations whose knowledge and abilities greatly outstripped their own, and who vanished inexplicably, frequently due to flood-related disasters. The unusual carvings and artistic themes discovered on or next to these megaliths are another intriguing aspect worth taking into account. For instance, adjacent stones at Olentai Tambo have elaborate carvings of spirals, stylized figures, and abstract geometric shapes. Similar engravings, stylized animal symbols, abstract geometric patterns, and individuals holding what look like handbags or little pouches can be seen at numerous megalithic sites around the world, most notably Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. These sculptures imply a potential shared cultural symbolism among ancient builders who were separated by thousands of miles, even though interpretations differ. Could these walls be the remains of an ancient building network that communicated ideas, symbols, or possibly even technology over great distances? The parallels in technique and symbolic carvings offer an intriguing hypothesis, even though concrete proof of such a worldwide relationship is still hard. It presents the fascinating notion that ancient peoples, who were far more interconnected than is typically thought, exchanged ideas and abilities in addition to things, leaving behind mysterious buildings whose origins and functions continue to baffle us.
It's also important to take into account the exact astronomical alignments seen at these locations. Clear celestial alignments are incorporated into the designs of many ancient megaliths around the world, including the ones that are being discussed here. Stones that are perfectly oriented in relation to solstices, equinoxes, or important star positions demonstrate that their creators had a highly developed knowledge of astronomy. These alignments appear more intricate and intentional than simple calendars, yet practical applications such as marking, planting, or harvest periods are conceivable. They also convey a profound regard or awe for celestial events, which may be a shared cultural characteristic of these long-gone civilizations. We can be assured that these old walls, which have stood peacefully for thousands of years, provide an intriguing glimpse into the powers of their unidentified creators. These massive stones, which were expertly fashioned, carried over great distances, and precisely aligned, clearly demonstrate the incredible skill of their makers. They challenge the oversimplified notion that early cultures were only rudimentary. Rather, they demonstrate the resourcefulness, intelligence, and inventiveness of the people who constructed these walls in ways that are now difficult for us to comprehend. You come across the tangible legacy of people who were masters of stonework in ways that few others have since surpassed as you walk among the massive stones at locations like Sakaivoan or look out into the waters surrounding Arwad.
Whether the builders were Phoenicians, ancient Peruvians, or members of other long-lost societies, their amazing accomplishments are preserved in stone and continue to arouse wonder and intrigue thousands of years later. Few people are familiar with this enigmatic location, which is tucked away amid the serene and windswept Golden Heights. However, it is unquestionably captivating to those who experience it. The Arabic term for the wildcat stone stack is Ruja el-Hiri. This fascinating prehistoric building is made up of several enormous circular stone circles that have subtly dominated the arid landscape for countless years. Rujahiri predates many of the more well-known ancient structures in the world, having been constructed approximately 5,000 years ago during the early Bronze Age. Its actual intricacy is shockingly hard to understand from the ground up. Just heaps of basalt stones dispersed throughout a field. But if you look at it from above, the image drastically alters. When viewed from above, it displays an incredibly accurate pattern of round stone walls that are tastefully placed inside one another, resembling waves that radiate forth from a central stone mound. The circumference of the greatest circle is an astounding 160 meters. Furthermore, more than 42,000 tons of precisely positioned volcanic rock make up the complete structure. Although archaeologists concur that the site probably had great significance for its creators, it is still unclear why it was built. Ruja Milhiri's obvious correlation with astronomical events is what makes it so fascinating. The building's central mound is illuminated by the first rays of the rising sun that filter through the entryway on the longest day of the year, the summer solstice. This precise alignment of the sun clearly implies that the building's designers were highly knowledgeable about astronomy and purposefully planned the construction to follow the seasons.
The findings from digs inside the center mound add even more intrigue. Deep within, archaeologists found a burial chamber that was a little later in time than the circles.
This implies that the location may have performed a number of ceremonial or ritualistic tasks throughout many centuries, possibly related to celebrating astronomical events, marking seasonal changes, or paying respect to ancestors. But no clear explanation completely clarifies the site's original function, leaving historians and archaeologists with more puzzles than answers. Rujam el-Hiri's mystery is further enhanced by local legend. Legends of giants that once roamed the area are very common among the local communities, particularly the Druze. According to these customs, these big creatures carried huge stones in their bare hands and created colossal structures with ease overnight. These stories may seem a bit fanciful today. Interestingly, though, they recite similar traditions from societies all over the world, from the giants who are thought to have constructed megaliths in ancient Armenia, to the giants who are said to have created Stonehenge in England. According to some local myths, this area was formerly home to a highly developed ancient civilization that was proficient in astronomy and construction before abruptly disappearing without leaving any obvious signs. These tales provide fascinating insights into how ancient people interpreted enigmatic constructions left by long-gone societies. We are positive that the builders of Rujam el-Hiri were well-organized, well-informed, and able to manage sizable teams in order to complete big tasks. They precisely matched their construction to astronomical phenomena by meticulously planning the placement of each stone. Even now, as visitors stand inside its concentric circles beneath the wide sky, they can't help but feel that the location is unique, a yird, a long-standing connection that ties people to the cycles of the natural world. Even while Rujam el-Hiri is still mostly ignored by popular archaeology, its existence in the Golan Heights never fails to pique interest. Whether constructed by fabled giants, lost nations, or ancient astronomers, this amazing stone edifice subtly urges everyone who visits to understand the complexities of our shared history. Our journey now enters Saudi Arabia's sun-drenched deserts after passing through enigmatic stone circles in the Golan Heights, a region of ancient mysteries and bleak beauty. Al-Nasla, one of the most unusual geological structures in the world, is situated here amidst drifting sands and unrelenting sunlight. The Al-Nasla rock formation looks almost unreal at first view, as though it was created by a sculptor's imagination rather than by the forces of nature. A vertical divide that is so clean and perfect that it appears to have been created by a modern laser rather than anything that nature could have produced separates two massive sandstone stones that are sitting side by side. They have a graceful, almost gravity-defying appearance because each half is delicately placed on a tiny, naturally formed pedestal. The startling accuracy of the cut between the two stones, however, is what draws the eye right away. The fracture line that separates them is completely straight and so clearly defined that spectators frequently wonder about its natural origins. It stretches down several meters in height. Even skilled geologists who have seen innumerable instances of weathering and erosion are astounded by the remarkable perfection of the Al-Nasla formations. There are scientific interpretations that imply this unique split could be explained by normal geological processes like wind erosion, seismic activity, or pressure changes in the rock layers. All experts are not entirely satisfied with any of these theories, though. The division's symmetry and smoothness are just too exact to be comfortably ascribed to nature alone, opening the door for fascinating possibilities. Amazing petroglyphs carved into the sandstone surface of Al-Nazla provide still another level of mystery. These prehistoric carvings, which are thought to be thousands of years old, offer a fascinating look into the early human occupants of the area by showing a variety of animals, people, and abstract shapes. However, how do these sculptures relate to the mysterious split, if at all? Is the amazing geological oddity next to these petroglyphs also the work of, or at least an inspiration for, the people who made them? Some scholars hypothesize that the split may have been purposely made by ancient individuals with sophisticated knowledge or skills, given the incredible accuracy involved.
Naturally, a theory like this makes one wonder what kind of technology they would have had access to. According to conventional historical knowledge, the societies that inhabited this arid area thousands of years ago had only primitive tools, such as hammers, levers, and stone and bronze chisels. However, it would still be difficult and time-consuming to cut a stone this huge with current technology and produce a line that is as exact. Could an ancient society have had access to techniques that are substantially more advanced than those recognized by traditional history? This question cannot be satisfactorily answered by actual historical sources. Nevertheless, fascinating hints can be found in regional Arabian mythology. According to local legend, there were ancient tribes that were skilled with stone and could easily shape it with odd and unidentified implements. These tales frequently incorporate mythological elements, describing creatures or individuals possessing extraordinary abilities that could change the firmness of stone, making it pliable or malleable. Scientists are still debating and researching the formation's origins at Al-Nazla. According to some geologists, stress fractures caused by seismic activity in the distant past are what caused the rock to split so perfectly. Others argue that the precise crack we observe today may have resulted from warm groundwater weakening certain mineral layers inside the sandstone due to ancient volcanic activity. However, neither scenario completely persuades skeptics, allowing for discussion and other interpretations. It's interesting to think about what people would have thought when they saw this unusual rock structure thousands of years ago. Did they interpret it as proof of supernatural or divine intervention? Was the site specifically selected for petroglyphs because the artists perceived something sacred or unique in its appearance? Al-Nazla doubtless meets the criteria for extraordinary, as ancient cultures frequently held uncommon natural landmarks in high regard and gave them a unique meaning or spiritual significance. And so they say, on those dark and stormy nights, when the moon hid behind the clouds, you could hear the ancient tribes singing, their voices rising above the wind, telling tales of how they shaped the stone with magical tools that no one has ever seen since. And if you listen carefully, you might even hear their distant chanting now, if you dare. The mystery is further flavored by local Bedouin customs. Tribal stories tell of a time in the past when strong creatures or expert artisans lived on the land and left behind faint signs of their existence, such as monuments and marks intended to serve as guides or symbolic memories of their passage. Could one such purposefully positioned monument be represented by the perfectly split stones of Al-Nusla? History has forgotten its significance and message. The Al-Nusla rock structure still fascinates and confounds tourists today, regardless of its actual origins, whether they are entirely natural, man-made, or something else entirely. To witness this perplexing geological wonder up close, scientists, historians, and tourists travel into the arid desert. It continues to be a popular topic for conjecture and wonder because of its unique, almost artistic aspect and the unsolved problems surrounding its development. Maybe in the future, fresh findings or sophisticated scientific study will make it clear exactly how this mysterious creation came to be. Al-Nusla, a stone enigma, stands silently in the desert sun. Until then, beckoning anybody who sees it to wonder about its origins, its mysteries, and the unwritten tales that lie hidden deep beneath its perfectly divided face. We now travel to Egypt, which is well known for its historical wonders, but also has lesser known but no less fascinating sights. The Osiren is a mysterious construct that many people believe predates even the ancient Egyptian dynasties. It is tucked away behind the Temple of Seti I Adabidos. The Osiren doesn't initially resemble normal Egyptian architecture. This old complex, which is partially subterranean, feels more like something you might find deep beneath a vanished civilization than something that is hidden behind a beautifully decorated temple. Going down into the Osiren is like traveling back in time to a time before the Great Sphinx or the pyramids. The Osiren is a symmetrical chamber that is partially submerged in groundwater and is made up of a number of enormous granite pillars that are precisely positioned around a central island.
These enormous pillars, each weighing around 100 tons, are remarkably precisely carved and positioned. The surfaces are flat, straightforward, and strikingly austere, in contrast to the elaborate hieroglyphics and fine carvings that cover the majority of Egyptian temples. Like the megalithic walls of faraway Peru or the Mediterranean, the masonry exhibits amazing craftsmanship, with flawless joints, sharp angles, and straight edges, all accomplished without mortar. This architectural approach differs from conventional ancient Egyptian techniques. Egyptian temples, such as the neighboring Temple of Seti, are known for their intricate reliefs, vibrant paintings, and rich inscriptions. This ornamental magnificence, however, is absent from the Osirian. Rather, its simplicity is almost modern, and it radiates a minimalist sophistication. Because of this striking stylistic difference, scholars have questioned whether the Osirian are actually Egyptian and instead descended from a far older culture. It has been difficult to date the Osirian with certainty using historical documents and archaeological data. It is credited by traditional Egyptologists to Pharaoh Seti I between 1290 and 1279 BC. The evidence is not totally clear, though, and many academics contend that the structure is much older, possibly thousands of years older, based on its distinctive shape, construction techniques, and significant patterns of water erosion on the stone surfaces.
Alternative historians have noted that these erosion patterns are strikingly similar to those that were famously discovered on the body of the Great Sphinx at Giza. This suggests that the site was exposed to severe flooding or extended periods of precipitation, which occurred long before Egypt's acknowledged dynastic periods. The temperature and environmental conditions of the region thousands of years before Orthodox history acknowledges large-scale Egyptian civilization are intriguingly suggested by this observation. The enigma surrounding the Osirian is more intriguingly layered by Egyptian legend. The location is said to worship Osiris, the god of rebirth and the afterlife. According to local customs, the Osirian was purposefully constructed to represent Osiris's tomb, connecting the building to ancient mythology of a golden age when gods and demigods had direct interactions with mankind. The ancient Egyptians believed that the Osirian had delivered civilization, wisdom, and culture to humanity. Egyptians have always insisted that many of their sacred sites were not originally built by them.
Rather, they spoke of inheriting temples and other sacred buildings from a much older society, a highly developed civilization that they said had a direct relationship with gods or other heavenly creatures. According to these traditions, Egypt was ruled by semi-divine beings known as the Shamwu, or followers of Horus, long before written history started. Ancient records attribute the development of sophisticated cultural practices, colossal architecture, and intricate spiritual beliefs to the Shamwu. Is the Osirian one of these fabled inherited buildings? Its design undoubtedly fits the Egyptians' descriptions of these ancient sacred structures. Enormous size, exquisite workmanship, and unique building techniques that set it apart from other examples of the acknowledged dynasty period. The historical chronology of Egypt and the actual provenance of its oldest monuments are intriguingly called into question by this. The Osirian's architectural characteristics and advanced construction methods are similar to those of other mysterious ancient sites around the world, such as Sakai-Waman in Peru or Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, which adds to the mystery. These parallels suggest that there may have been common knowledge or practices in the distant past that predates the documented histories of these disparate societies. However, the Osirian remains a mystery despite current studies and significant archaeological curiosity. Its chambers are constantly filled with water, which prevents excavation and in-depth research, keeping its mysteries hidden beneath a shallow pool that has existed since ancient times. Its commanding presence and austere elegance continue to astound visitors today, captivating their attention without disclosing its original origins. Near Abydos, local tour guides and historians frequently discuss the Osirian with a mixture of respect and interest, sharing tales that have been passed down through the ages that allude to extinct societies and heavenly creatures that once coexisted with people. These legends are still relevant in contemporary Egypt, more as remnants of a bygone era captured in narrative than as fantastical mythology.
Even if the Osirian's construction is still unknown, its existence casts doubt on our knowledge of ancient Egyptian history.
Perhaps future finds beneath the beaches and seas surrounding Idos will ultimately offer conclusive hints regarding the actual age and origin of this intriguing construction as archaeologists continue their investigation and analysis. We now head northwest over the Mediterranean Sea to the Iberian Peninsula and a peaceful region of southern Spain, leaving the sun-drenched scenery of Egypt behind. The Dolmen Dotto is a fascinating historic building located close to the town of Trigueros, surrounded by serene pastures and undulating hillsides. This modest but impressive structure adds to the global puzzle of ancient megalithic builders whose works continue to captivate both tourists and archaeologists. Dolmen Dotto is one of the biggest and most important megalithic tombs in Spain, having been built some 5,000 years ago. It looks quite easy from the outside. A corridor lined with stones and covered by a huge pile of soil. Entering, however, reveals a world of wonder. The passage, which is over 21 meters long, takes guests deep into an enigmatic room made of enormous, upright stones. Visitors quickly realized that this was no typical building because each stone slab, some of which weighed several tons, was painstakingly selected and positioned. The engravings that adorn the stone walls of Dolmen Dotto, however, reflect the actual wonder of the place. Visitors can see elaborate patterns, spirals, abstract motifs, and stylized characters carved straight into the stone surface as they slowly make their way into the murky interior. Although the exact significance of these symbols is still unclear, they seem extremely purposeful and consistent. Do these sculptures represent old maps indicating nearby religious places, or are they only ornamental, symbolic references to celestial events? They are still being studied by academics who are drawn to their depth and complexity. Dolmen Dotto's intentional astronomical alignment is one of its intriguing features. Archaeologists studying the tomb noted that its entrance faces precisely eastward.
The rising sun's rays reach deep into the dolmen's passageway every year during the equinoxes, the 2 days of the year when day and night are equal in duration, lighting the inner chamber and its historic carvings. This phenomena strongly implies that the designers of the site were highly knowledgeable about astronomy and precisely matched their structure to particular times in the solar calendar. It is impossible to overestimate the level of sophistication needed to produce such exact astronomical alignments 5,000 years ago. It suggests that solar events are deeply valued culturally and that careful planning and attentive observation are required. Although the precise reason for this alignment is still unknown, many scholars think it might have had ceremonial or religious purposes, such as identifying the seasons or agricultural cycles, or possibly establishing a connection between the living and their ancestors at significant periods of the year. We now leave the warmth of southern Spain and head north across the waters to the emerald pastures of Ireland. Passing through verdant landscapes, the Newgrange tomb, another ancient wonder, is located here in the tranquil Boone Valley.
Built approximately 3200 BC, Newgrange is older than Stonehenge and even the Great Pyramid of Giza. It provides yet another fascinating look into the highly advanced skills of ancient builders. Newgrange initially looks like a big round pile of grass-covered ground. However, the structure's actual complexity becomes apparent when you get closer. Large, rounded granite rocks adorn the facade of Newgrange, which is surrounded by massive stones standing erect. The wall is a beautiful white quartz stone that has been restored to its original appearance in recent times. The mausoleum stands imposingly in the Irish countryside, with a diameter of more than 80 meters and a height of almost 13 meters. The most fascinating aspect of Newgrange, however, is within. Visitors cautiously make their way into the center of the tomb, which is around 19 meters deep, down a tiny path lined with stones.
3 alcoves, each thought to have housed ancient relics or ritual items, are located in a crucifixion-shaped room at the end of the path. However, what immediately grabs notice is the gorgeous carved artwork that covers the internal stones. Deeply cut into enormous slabs of stone, almost every surface is decorated with abstract geometric patterns, zigzag lines, circles, and spirals. These motifs suggest cultural relationships spanning hundreds of years and thousands of kilometers, as they exhibit striking parallels to those discovered at far-off locations such as Dolmen Doto. Similar to Dolmen Doto, Newgrange's exact astronomical alignment is one of its most striking characteristics. Something quite spectacular happens every year on the winter solstice, which is the year's shortest day and longest night. Carefully placed by the ancient builders, the roof box is an opening above the entryway through which a narrow beam of sunlight enters at daybreak. For a brief but amazing moment, this beam brightens the interior chamber as it slowly crawls up the tube and penetrates far inside. The interior of the tomb is kept dark and out of direct sunlight for the remainder of the year. It is no coincidence that this alignment is so exact. To properly situate the roof box and chamber, it took significant engineering expertise, mathematical computations, and keen observing abilities. For the builders of Newgrange, the solstice alignment probably had great significance, since it represented rebirth, renewal, or the prospect of light returning after the protracted darkness of winter. Another level of fascination is added by legends that have been passed down through Irish tradition. According to local legend, the Tuatha De Danann, a mythical tribe with legendary abilities, were the ancient race who constructed Newgrange. Tradition holds that the Tuatha De Danann were adept at astronomy, sorcery, and carpentry, and they built colossal constructions with ease. Even though they are fictitious, these legends underscore the site's ongoing mystery by expressing true awe and reverence for its amazing sophistication. The majority of archaeologists agree that Newgrange was largely used as a mausoleum or ceremonial site, linking the living with their ancestors at important cosmic events, in contrast to other ancient constructions whose function may be disputed.
Thousands of tourists still apply every year for the unique opportunity to see the winter solstice illumination, hoping to capture the moment as the ancient builders of Newgrange intended. Ancient society's extraordinary level of intelligence and meticulous planning is demonstrated by both Dolmen Doto in Spain and Newgrange in Ireland. Despite being geographically and culturally separated, their builders used similar techniques, made gigantic stone structures, had elaborate carvings, and followed exact astronomical alignments. The fact that these structures exist at all shows how inventive and creative the individuals who built them were, even though we may never fully comprehend all of their motivations. Awe and wonder are still evoked by these two amazing locations, which stand tall in their own environments. Whether lit by the winter solstice in Ireland or the equinox sunrise in Spain, each building serves as a reminder of the long-standing human obsession with the stars and our unwavering determination to build enduring monuments that span generations. We go southeast across Europe and into the rocky terrain of Lebanon, from the gently sloping hills of Ireland's Newgrange tomb to a location that has captivated tourists for millennia: Baalbek. Some of the most incredible megalithic stones ever carved and positioned by human hands may be found in Baalbek, which is tucked away in the lush Bekaa Valley. However, it is still obstinately unclear how the ancient people accomplished this achievement, even after years of research. One is instantly struck by the enormity of the Baalbek complex as they approach it. The site is mostly made up of Roman temples, such as the Temple of Venus, the Temple of Bacchus, and the Temple of Jupiter, which were constructed about 2,000 years ago. Each is remarkable on its own. However, the foundation of these Roman buildings is made up of giant stone blocks that are so well placed and big that they dwarf even Roman engineering achievements. The Trilithon is the modern name for this foundation.
3 extraordinarily massive pieces of limestone, each weighing about 800 tons. Think about this to get a sense of that kind of weight. Each stone is about the size of 2 jumbo planes when fully laden. What's even more amazing is that these stones weren't just tossed into place. They were carried, formed, sliced, and positioned precisely. There was no need for mortar or glue, because the edges of these enormous stones fit together so precisely, even a sheet of paper cannot be inserted into the cracks, even after thousands of years. Although the Trilithon stones by themselves are striking, Baalbek is also home to another stone referred to as the pregnant woman stone, which is still resting in a nearby quarry. One of the biggest single carved stones ever made by humanity. This stone weighs an astounding 1,000 tons. Modern engineers can't even begin to imagine how this enormous block was supposed to be moved, much less placed inside a structure. It would be extremely difficult to move and position stones of this size, even with our most potent cranes and transportation tools today. This is an intriguing conundrum. How precisely did ancient people complete this enormous work with just what we presume to be simple tools and machinery? Baalbek did not merely drag his stones coarsely over short distances. Because the quarry that provides these enormous stones is about 1 kilometer away, builders had to move them over rough, inclining ground in addition to lifting them. Over the years, a number of explanations have been put up by historians and archaeologists. Some speculate that the stones may have been gradually brought into position by intricate networks of rollers, ropes, ramps, and thousands of workers. Others contend that because of the stone's immense size and weight, such techniques are not physically feasible. Even a small portion of the movement needed has been difficult to recreate in modern trials, utilizing antiquated methods, often running into issues with friction, topography, and personnel. However, a somewhat different and, to be sure, more colorful account can be found in local Lebanese mythology. Stories that have been passed down through the generations describe giants with extraordinary strength and abilities that previously roamed this valley. Legend has it that these giants were able to lift massive stones with ease and place them into temple walls and foundations with the ease of a kid stacking construction blocks. Even while giant myths may seem fanciful to us now, ancient people actually believed that these stories were historical facts.
Indeed, giants or enormous humanoid creatures that built monumental monuments are mentioned in various cultures around the world. Particularly in Lebanon, local legends portray these massive creatures as either great heroes or semi-divine ancestors who effortlessly sculpted their terrain, leaving behind remnants of their might in imposing constructions such as Baalbek. Historical literature provide fascinating insights that go beyond regional folklore. When ancient Greek and Roman writers visited the area thousands of years ago, they wrote about how amazed they were by Baalbek's enormous stones. Pliny the Elder, a Roman historian who wrote in the 1st century AD, astonished by the temple foundations and credited either mythical figures from the distant past or unidentified ancient peoples with building them. Baalbek's enormous stones obviously predate the Romans, even though Roman architects were masters of engineering. Their buildings usually used smaller stones and bricks joined together with cement and concrete. Apparently appreciating the stability and longevity of these pre-existing foundations, the Romans erected on top of them when they came. However, the Romans themselves did not leave a clear record identifying the original builders of the massive megalithic platform beneath their temples. Baalbek's trilithon stones are currently credited by archaeologists to an ancient Phoenician or Canaanite civilization that may have existed between 3,000 and 4,000 years ago. However, our historical records also show that these ancient societies lacked advanced engineering tools and had rather primitive technology. This disparity creates a perplexing void in our comprehension. Who has the technological capacity to move these stones, if not the Romans or other known civilizations? It is still breathtaking to visit Baalbek today. Wandering amid these massive stones, tourists and academics alike are in awe of their size and artistry. In the hopes that fresh information or improved techniques would shed light on how ancient builders accomplished these amazing achievements, archaeologists and engineers are still doing research.
In the meantime, the locals are still rightfully proud of this outstanding historical landmark. In order to acknowledge the mystique and uphold the storytelling traditions of their forebears, Lebanese guides frequently tell tourists about the ancient giant legends in a respectful and humorous manner. The meticulous accuracy shown in the cutting of these stones, as well as in their placement, only heightens the mystery. Upon close examination, surfaces seem to have been professionally machined instead of crudely hand-carved. According to some academics, ancient builders might have used unique chisels, diamond-tipped tools, or unidentified leverage devices, among other procedures or techniques that are now lost or unacknowledged.
However, no conclusive tools or equipment have yet to be found during archaeological investigations near Baalbek that could account for the stone's perfect shape. There is one thing that cannot be denied. The person who constructed Baalbek's foundation stones possessed exceptional organizational skills in addition to extensive stonework knowledge. Coordinated crews would have been needed to plan, shape, move, and place each enormous block perfectly. Professional understanding of engineering and physics concepts, as well as possibly exceptional physical prowess, if local legends are to be believed. The vast scope, intricate design, and timeless enigma of Baalbek stones never cease to enthrall people. They serve as a concrete example of human, or maybe superhuman, aspiration, talent, and willpower. Whether the result of legendary giants or ancient engineering prowess, Baalbek's megalithic foundation is still one of the most mysterious structures in the world, subtly urging tourists to discover its long-forgotten mysteries. We are now traveling over the Atlantic, well into the heart of North America, leaving behind the enormous stones of Baalbek. Huge earthworks that are equally intriguing but made entirely of clay and soil instead of stone can be found here, far from the famous pyramids of Egypt or the ancient temples of Greece.
The earth mounds are the name given to these amazing constructions by the ancient inhabitants of North America. Archaeologists are still in awe of these enormous constructions because of their immense size, elaborate patterns, and celestial alignments. The well-known Serpent Mound in Ohio is among the most remarkable earthworks in North America. This enormous effigy mound, which is more than 400 meters long and coils elegantly down a gently sloping slope, shows a serpent with open jaws that appears to be consuming an oval shape. Frequently understood to represent the sun, an egg, or maybe rebirth or regeneration. One of the biggest effigy mounds in the world, Serpent Mound, was constructed by meticulously sculpting clay and earth. Both the scale and the accuracy are impressive. Serpent Mound is particularly fascinating because of its exact astrological alignments, rather than just its massive size or striking aspect. The mound's curves perfectly match important solar and lunar phenomena, according to archaeologists who have studied it in detail. For instance, the serpent's coils precisely line up with equinoxes and lunar phases, and its head points directly towards the summer solstice sunset. Its precise placement suggests that its ancient designers, who meticulously studied and documented celestial patterns over long periods of time, possessed an exceptional degree of astronomical expertise. Serpent Mound is by no means the only example of an ancient earthwork of this type. Thousands of earthen constructions, geometric mounds, platform mounds, burial mounds, and effigies of animals and mythological creatures may be found all over the Midwest and Southeast regions of the United States. The Cahokia Mounds in Illinois are notable among these. Monk's Mound, the biggest earthen building in North America, was located in Cahokia, a vast city that once homed to tens of thousands of people more than 1,000 years ago. This platform mound, which is approximately 30 meters high and spans more than 14 acres, dwarfs many modern constructions.
The cityscape of Cahokia is
intricately linked to the rhythms of the heavens, thanks to the precise alignment of the entire city with astronomical occurrences by the city's ancient architects and astronomers. Another nearby example of ancient North America's proficiency in astronomical alignment is Newark Earthworks in Ohio. Newark Earthworks was the biggest geometric earthwork complex ever built, spanning over 4 square miles when it was first built thousands of years ago by the Hopewell culture. It tracks the moon's movements over an incredible 18.6 cycle with precisely designed circles and octagons that match lunar cycles. Generations of diligent observation and careful preparation were needed to get such accuracy. Naturally, the question comes up: how did these prehistoric societies in North America acquire such advanced technical and astronomical knowledge that allowed them to build earthworks of this size with such accuracy? Fascinating insights can be gained from indigenous traditions around the region. Rich oral histories of ancient, highly developed ancestors with in-depth knowledge of astronomy, engineering, and spirituality are shared by many Native American cultures. These customs honor elders or earlier peoples who transmitted sacred knowledge and methods, such as how to construct massive ceremonial buildings that line up with the sun, moon, and stars. Many native tribes, including the Cherokee and Shawnee, have traditions about ancestors who built earthworks as potent spiritual symbols or to commemorate celestial events. These tribes frequently teach their successors how to live in harmony with the cycles of nature. These teachings highlight a close relationship between the land, the sky, and spiritual practices that have been passed down through the ages through storytelling and ceremonial practices. The way that these indigenous stories consistently depict past peoples who either disappeared or moved on, leaving only their colossal earthworks as silent relics of their existence, is an intriguing feature. Despite the disappearance or dispersion of the original builders themselves, these tales imply that hereditary knowledge that has been meticulously kept and transmitted orally has persisted. It's interesting to note that these ancient mound builders rarely left extensive written records during archaeological excavations. Instead, their communities were rebuilt through meticulous examination of artifacts, alignments, and construction methods.
These ancient tribes relied solely on memory, ritual, and storytelling to transmit their knowledge, even though they had highly developed engineering and astronomical observations. For Native American tribes who have strong ties to these historic locations, these earthworks still have great spiritual and cultural significance today. Because they see earth mounds as sacred sites that unite the past, present, and future generations, indigenous people frequently play a key role in their protection, interpretation, and preservation. Imagine the ancient societies that once convened at Serpent Mound, Cahokia, or Newark earthworks to witness solstices, equinoxes, and lunar events. Today, visitors frequently find themselves standing in silent amazement. These earthworks serve as reminders of a deep human urge to connect with cosmic patterns that are honored and perpetuated through colossal earthen building.
even as astronomers and archaeologists marvel at the intricate alignments and calculations required for their development. The Earth Mounds and Serpent Mound of North America remain ageless examples of ancient creativity, observation, and cultural depth. As we move forward, beneath their green surfaces are monuments that were formed of the ground itself, not stone, and that are still fascinating, long-lasting, and full of secrets. We now travel back south, far into the untamed heights of Peru's highlands, from the verdant earthworks of North America. One of South America's most mysterious archaeological sites, Silstani, is located here with a view of the icy blue waters of Lake Umayo close to Puno. This enigmatic complex subtly attracts attention and is well known for its impressive stone towers, known locally as chulpas. Chulpas are remarkable cylindrical towers made of large, precisely cut stones that rise above the windswept terrain. Some are meticulously formed and put together into exact circular constructions, reaching heights of about 12 meters. It soon becomes apparent that they are not your typical ruins when you get closer. It is incredibly well made.
Like other mysterious old sites like Sakayawaman or Ollantaytambo, the precisely formed and wonderfully smooth stones fit together firmly without the need for mortar. Indeed, Silastani's accuracy is on par with some of the world's most advanced examples of ancient masonry. But these amazing towers were more than just ceremonial landmarks or monuments. According to archaeologists, they were once used as burial towers for priests or significant members of the community. Many chulpas were filled with mummies that had been meticulously wrapped and positioned in fetal positions, accompanied by offerings like food, pottery, and valuables for their journey into the afterlife. However, the fascinating subject of why these burial structures were built with such exceptional care and accuracy still stands. The Silastani's chulpa's unique architectural style is one of their most striking features. The chulpas include enormous, exquisitely carved stones that are arranged at minor inward angles, in contrast to other buildings made of plain, stacked stone. As evidence of their builders' advanced engineering knowledge, these towers' remarkable stability and capacity to endure centuries of earthquakes and severe weather were made possible by their purposeful inward tapering. Silastani's story is enhanced by the fascinating local tribal customs. These magnificent stone towers were not built entirely by common people, according to old traditions that have been passed down through the centuries in the area. Rather, the stories clearly describe the Gentiles, a mighty, highly developed civilization that formerly inhabited the highlands and consisted of giants. According to legend, these creatures, who were taller, stronger, and wiser than the common people of the era, constructed these structures swiftly and efficiently, moving bulky stones into position with ease. These days, tales of giants frequently inspire incredulity. It's interesting how common these stories are in regional oral traditions. Across all Andean societies, there is a strong resonance with the notion of a previous, more developed people who suddenly vanished, leaving their works behind. Numerous indigenous groups in Peru, such as the Quechua and Aymara peoples, have similar tales of great predecessors whose empires unexpectedly ended due to natural disasters, usually characterized as massive floods. It's interesting to note that archaeological studies conducted near Lake Umayo offer evidence that the region was impacted by severe flooding in the distant past. Significant water level variations thousands of years ago are shown by geological evidence, suggesting times when the shoreline of ancient lakes may have abruptly risen and submerged entire communities. Would such an occurrence have destroyed or uprooted these highly developed builders, leaving only their mysterious stone towers as evidence of their presence? Historians and archaeologists are still fascinated by the chulpas themselves, despite local folklore and flood myths. Examining their inside structure reveals advanced drainage and ventilation systems that keep the building's interiors perfect for keeping human remains, a blatant sign of careful, purposeful building practices. The remarkable abilities of their architects are further highlighted by the fact that these constructions have remained mostly intact over centuries of severe, high-altitude circumstances and innumerable earthquakes. Visitors to Silstiani today stroll among these imposing stone constructions, taking in their enigmatic aura and considering the long-gone culture that built them. The chulpas are enduring monuments to a people whose stories are only told in rumors and via their incredibly strong stone building set against the bleak beauty of Lake Umayo's beaches. New findings could eventually provide more conclusive information about the builders and their destiny as contemporary archaeology continues to uncover Silstiani's mysteries. In the meantime, these remarkable cylindrical towers silently beckon inquiry while keeping watch over the ancient terrain and serving as a reminder of how much of our history still anxiously awaits discovery. We now cross the Pacific Ocean and arrive at the verdant, historic regions of eastern China.
Beneath the serene landscape of Zhejiang Province, close to the town of Longyu, are a number of incredible subterranean chambers that were just recently found. Because of their enormous size and the fact that no historical documents describe their formation, these amazing underground halls, now known as the Longyu Caves, represent one of China's biggest archaeological mysteries. When local villagers drained what they thought were natural ponds in 1992, they unintentionally discovered the Longyu Caves. Imagine their surprise when they discovered massive, finely carved halls concealed just beneath their feet instead of ponds. Since that first discovery, at least 24 caverns have been found. They were all painstakingly dug up into solid siltstone. However, the precise number of these subterranean chambers is still unknown. There might be many more out there, as scientists believe. It is breathtaking to enter the caves for the first time. The enormous ceilings in each of the enormous chambers, some of which are as big as cathedrals, are held up by enormous stone pillars that were all carved straight from solid rock. It would take an incredible amount of work to empty out any one of these rooms. However,
Producing dozens would require a massively coordinated effort spanning several years and hundreds or even thousands of competent individuals. Uniform, parallel grooves that are precisely spaced and expertly carved mark the exact and intentional designs found on the cave's walls and ceilings. Such intricate tool marks point to a degree of organization and skill that is uncommon in prehistoric underground excavations. However, surprisingly, no archaeological findings have shed light on the construction process or motivation for the caverns. There have been no discoveries of tools, ceramics, artifacts, or even human bones that could offer unambiguous hints about who made them. The acoustics of the Longyu Caves are among their most fascinating features. Visitors frequently observe how sound reverberates in these chambers, creating flawless echoes that flow seamlessly across the expansive areas.
This acoustic accuracy raises the possibility that sound was purposefully included in the cave's initial design. Could the chanting, music, or speaking that purposefully reverberated through the halls of these caverns have been part of ceremonial or ritual functions? The creative engravings that can be discovered all over the caves provide still another level of mystery. Various walls, columns, and ceilings are decorated with intricate reliefs, abstract motifs, and symbols. The traditional Chinese motifs found at other ancient sites are not reflected in these artistic works. Rather, they display distinctive geometric and abstract designs that blend waves, spirals, and sharp angles, perhaps representing ideas or tales that are unknown to contemporary researchers. These sculptures' meticulous accuracy suggests they were significant and not just ornamental, implying a deeper symbolic meaning that may have been connected to cultural values or spiritual beliefs. Understanding the genesis of the Longyu Caves is made more difficult by the total lack of historical data pertaining to them. The historians of ancient China kept precise records, meticulously recording important cultural accomplishments and large-scale construction undertakings. Surprisingly, though, these amazing caves and their constructors are not mentioned in any known Chinese literature, inscriptions, or papers. Archaeologists, historians, and tourists have all expressed great interest in this lack of documents, leading them to wonder why such a remarkable accomplishment went unrecorded. Some academics believe the Longyu Caves may be far older than previously thought because of their size and level of sophistication. Geological estimates suggest the caverns may be 2,000 years old, which would place their development during the Qin or Han eras in China, which were characterized by notable technological advancements. But even these periods left behind a wealth of historical documentation, which begs the issue again. If they were produced during these thoroughly documented periods, why were they entirely left out of history?
Though there aren't many specific solutions, local mythology provides fascinating insights. Villagers' traditional tales hazily describe ancient people or mythical ancestors who constructed enormous underground shelters or sanctuaries during dangerous times. However, these stories are nonetheless vague and incomplete, never providing a complete explanation of the identity of these builders or the exact reason the caves were required.
The cavern's total absence of soot deposit on the walls and ceilings is another intriguing feature. Traces of soot and smoke should still be visible if ancient laborers had illuminated their work with torches or lanterns, as would be expected. However, none have ever been located, which adds to the mystery of how these enormous pitch-black rooms were lit during construction. Did their builders have access to unusual techniques or unidentified illumination sources that would have allowed them to carve in the dark? Today, the Longyou Caves are a well-liked tourist destination that draws tourists from all over the world. As they descend into their expansive interiors, visitors are left in awe of the exquisite craftsmanship, exceptional acoustics, and mysterious creative symbols that adorn their walls. But even after decades of investigation and study, the caves still keep their mysteries. In an effort to find more hints, archaeologists, geologists, and historians frequently visit the location and use cutting-edge tools like ground-penetrating radar and laser scanning. One of the major unresolved mysteries of ancient China is still the Longyou Caves. Their finding exposes holes in our knowledge of the capacities of early civilization and calls into question accepted historical narratives. Visitors and scholars alike are left wondering about the missing builders who subtly chiseled these magnificent underground rooms, leaving behind an architectural masterpiece that never ceases to astound anybody who enters until conclusive proof is found. We go far across the enormous Pacific Ocean, from the dim depths of China's Longyou Caverns to Easter Island, a secluded patch of volcanic territory. Rapa Nui is a remote island that is thousands of kilometers away from any other populated landmass.
The mysterious statues of Moai. There are around 900 enormous stone statues called Moai scattered across the rocky terrain of Easter Island. These statues, which are carved from solid volcanic rock, range widely in size, but several of them tower over the landscape with an average height of 4 meters and weights of up to 14 tons. El Gigante, the biggest Moai ever attempted, is still half-carved at the Rano Raraku quarry. This behemoth would have weighed more than 250 tons and stood about 21 meters tall if it had been finished. Anyone who views the Moai is immediately struck with their exquisite craftsmanship. Volcanic tuff, a comparatively soft rock that nevertheless required careful carving techniques, was used to expertly form each figurine. Heavy brows, long noses, and precisely formed lips are all characteristics of the Moai's uniformly distinct face. Most astonishingly, their big eyes were once inlaid with coral and obsidian to produce a fierce stare. However, many of these inlays have since vanished due to deterioration. However, the process of carving these figures was just the start. After they were constructed, these massive statues had to be carried from the quarry to ceremonial platforms known as AU along the coast, which were frequently several kilometers away. It's still a mystery how the Rapa Nui people managed to pull off this incredible achievement. With their backs to the sea, a large number of Moai stand distant from the quarry atop their stone platforms. Even by today's standards, it would have taken a tremendous amount of work to carry them over hard terrain. Their transport has been explained by a variety of theories.
According to some archaeologists, locals pulled the moai across the island with ropes while using log rollers and wooden sledges. But this method would have needed a lot of wood, which is a resource that is infamously limited on Easter Island. The idea that the sculptures moved across the island is another fascinating story that has gained popularity through local oral tradition.
By rocking statues back and forth with ropes to simulate a gradual walking motion, researchers investigating this theory showed that it would be able to lift them upright. The precise technique is still up for debate among historians and archaeologists, despite the effectiveness of the experiment. According to oral histories passed down by the islanders themselves, the moai were moved into position by divine power and animated by spiritual forces. Such stories, however mythological, highlight how profoundly amazing and perplexing the statue's transit seemed to the islanders themselves. Their predecessors had a long history of ancestor worship, considering these tall stone statues to be significant chieftains and ancestors who guarded and looked after their offspring. Easter Island's story of cultural collapse, a swift and spectacular downfall whose origins are still up for debate, is what makes it even more fascinating. According to archaeological data, Easter Island formerly had a flourishing society with between 10,000 and 15,000 members. In order to construct and transport moai statues, these islanders had to maintain vast networks of collaboration, cultivate the land, and catch fish. But at some point in the island's history, probably in the 17th or 18th century, things took a significant turn for the worse. Evidence of fighting, diminishing resources, and the sudden cessation of moai construction can be found in archaeological layers from this era. Numerous incomplete monuments are left in quarries, as if their makers simply gave up or vanished out of thin air. The island's population plummeted, and a once cohesive, thriving society broke up into smaller, less successful factions. Numerous academics blame the abrupt collapse on resource misuse and environmental stress, especially on the island's few remaining trees, which were vital for agriculture and transportation. Decreased agricultural productivity and soil erosion probably got worse as deforestation increased. It would have become more and more difficult for islanders to maintain their way of life and large-scale construction projects.
However, some academics hypothesize that the scope and velocity of the collapse may not be adequately explained by environmental factors alone. Geological research has lately uncovered yet another fascinating possibility. When examining sediment layers, researchers found evidence that Easter Island had times of severe weather stress, including storms, droughts, and possibly even tsunamis brought on by distant seismic activity. Such abrupt and catastrophic natural calamities could have drastically disturbed island society and accelerated its collapse. The hypothesis that Easter Island's culture may have experienced one or many swift disasters is supported by intriguing local traditions that recount historical catastrophic occurrences, such as enormous waves that demolished coastal settlements. As striking reminders of their predecessors' susceptibility to strong natural forces, these stories have endured through the generations and are still ingrained in Rapa Nui oral history. A deep connection to an old society that once flourished on this isolated island is evident to visitors who stroll amid the quiet rows of Moai today. Numerous sculptures continue to look gravely inland, possibly concealing the details of their creation, including how they were carved, moved, and what ultimately caused their maker to go. We now make our way back across the world, leaving the windswept beaches of Easter Island behind. This time, they will arrive in the mysterious and historically rich region of southeast Turkey. Göbekli Tepe, one of archaeology's most astounding finds, and a location that has fundamentally altered our understanding of the beginning of civilization, is situated here on a peaceful hilltop with sweeping views of beautiful plains. Göbekli Tepe, which translates to Potbelly Hill in Turkish, is a slowly rising mound encircled by agriculture that looks surprisingly simple from a distance. However, beneath its modest facade is a remarkable ancient complex that dates back about 12,000 years. For comparison, Göbekli Tepe is around 7,000 years older than Stonehenge and more than 6,000 years older than Egypt's Great Pyramid.
It was nearly too amazing to be real when archaeologists first discovered it. Numerous sizable circular enclosures made of enormous limestone pillars have been discovered during excavations. Many of these pillars resemble enormous T-shaped columns. Some of them are up to 20 tons in weight and nearly 6 meters tall. In addition to their size, these stones' amazing detail carvings are what catch the eye right away. These pillars are decorated with intricate carvings of creatures including foxes, vultures, snakes, and lions, which were done with artistic accuracy that was previously thought to be possible at such an ancient time. A stylized figure carrying a tiny handbag-like object is even depicted on one curious pillar at Göbekli Tepe. This mysterious symbol is intriguingly seen in carvings all over the world, from prehistoric Mesopotamian sites to the stone sculptures discovered amidst Central American civilizational ruins. The handbag motif's recurrence throughout far-flung ancient societies has fascinated scholars and generated discussions about possible cross-cultural ties. Did these symbols just happen to be there, or would long-forgotten networks of communication have allowed ancient people from several continents to share ideas or symbolism? Examining the Göbekli Tepe construction techniques adds to the enigma. Its constructors positioned enormous stone pillars upright inside meticulously planned structures, in addition to carving and moving them. These enclosures were the result of extensive group effort and intricate design, indicating levels of cooperation and organization that were previously believed to be unattainable for hunter-gatherer societies of that era. Furthermore, there is no evidence that Göbekli Tepe was a home or domestic location according to archaeologists. There are no indications of cooking fires, normal household tools, or evidence of long-term living. Rather, scholars believe it was a ceremonial site, possibly the oldest temple in the world, where people from different places would come together occasionally, maybe to take part in festivities, rites, or social events connected to the natural cycles.
Interestingly, Göbekli Tepe was purposefully buried behind layers of dirt and debris around 8,000 BC after centuries of use, a move that preserved it exceptionally well. It's unclear why the ancient people decided to meticulously bury the location. According to some academics, it may have signaled the end of an important cultural period or was part of a conscious attempt to preserve the site. The phenomena of Göbekli Tepe is not unique. Other similarly intriguing sites, such as Karahi Tepe and Nali Kore, have recently been discovered in the same region of Turkey. These sites reflect the architectural style and symbolic engravings of Göbekli Tepe. The similarly striking T-shaped pillars and circular enclosures at Karahi Tepe, which is around 35 kilometers to the east, clearly imply that these locations were a part of a larger cultural movement or network that was sweeping over the area. Large pillars and elaborate sculptures that nearly matched Göbekli Tepe's style were also found by Nali Kore, who found it a little earlier, but now submerged because of a dam project. These associated sites offer strong proof that the local population communicated knowledge, ideas, and symbols over great distances through shared religious or cultural practices. The regular occurrence of specific symbolic imagery across numerous remote locations around the globe further supports this idea of ancient connectedness. For example, the serpent that is prominently shown at Göbekli Tepe is a common sign in ancient iconography around the world, from temples in Southeast Asia to the serpent mound in North America. Identical to Mesoamerican and Near Eastern artwork, birds, especially vultures and eagles, carved with identical stylistic aspects, are commonly depicted at Göbekli Tepe, implying shared symbolic connotations with the sky or spiritual worlds. These recurrent motifs raise the fascinating prospect of a common ancient symbolism and a cross-continental cultural lexicon. Traditional historians find it impossible that ancient societies separated by large land masses and oceans would have had direct interaction. Yet the obvious iconographic similarities are nevertheless perplexing.
Some scholars hypothesize that related symbolism may arise from shared experiences, such as witnessing natural phenomena or celestial events, which could inspire disparate civilizations to independently create iconography that is comparable. Yet, Göbekli Tepe's exact astronomical alignments make things even more complicated. Scientists have found that several of Tepe's features closely match specific star constellations, indicating that its creators used sophisticated astronomical observations. Such information suggests that these ancient peoples had a comprehensive grasp of the natural world around them, going beyond simple sky watching to include meticulous tracking and recording of celestial movements over extended periods of time. Today, tourists touring Göbekli Tepe stroll amid these historic pillars, in awe of their size, artistry, and enigmatic meaning. Our knowledge of this intriguing site is continuously growing as new structures and carvings are discovered during ongoing digs. However, there are still a lot of important questions. Göbekli Tepe and its sister sites, Kahan Tepe and Naklatari, were erected by whom?
What ceremonies or rites were performed inside these stone enclosures? And why were they eventually left behind and meticulously buried? In this part of Turkey, local customs provide some intriguing clues, talking about the remarkable knowledge and abilities of our ancient predecessors who taught their offspring about astronomy, agriculture, and spiritual practices before inexplicably disappearing and leaving behind only puzzling monuments. Even though they are mythological, these tales retell similar myths from other cultures, all of which allude to a bygone era when highly developed knowledge and abilities were normal. It becomes more and more evident after investigating the ancient mysteries at Göbekli Tepe and its sibling sites that our globe is home to innumerable tales from vanished civilizations. Naturally, a question comes up. As we've traveled the world and seen enormous stone circles, exact astronomical alignments, intricate carvings, and remarkable constructions, could these monuments be proof of highly developed societies that have vanished from the face of the earth? Maybe upended or destroyed by devastating floods that occurred thousands of years ago? Let's take a quick look at the geological and climatic shifts that occurred throughout the Earth to gain a better understanding of this fascinating concept. Around 10,000 to 5,000 BC, our Earth saw significant changes during this time, emerging from the last ice age. Sea levels surged quickly as massive ice sheets melted and receded, occasionally flooding entire coastal regions almost instantly. According to scientific studies, sea levels have risen by more than 120 meters worldwide, which is sufficient to irreversibly change human civilization, submerge large land masses, and reconfigure continents. This sea level rise wasn't gradual or subtle. It was swift and substantial. Rather, scientists now know that it happened in a sequence of catastrophic occurrences, sometimes leading to widespread flooding in a matter of generations. Rising oceans destroyed coastal places that were formerly densely populated, resource-rich, and suitable for settlement and agriculture, driving entire communities inland. Could these unexpected floods be the reason why so many myths and stories from ancient societies around the world depict disastrous water events? Interestingly, direct proof for these theories has been found in submerged archaeological discoveries. Divers found features that looked like man-made formations beneath the waters near Yonaguni Island in Japan, which may indicate an old sunken village or ceremonial site. Similarly, the underwater ruins discovered close to India's coast, such as those at Dwarka, show that highly developed building existed long before history was written. The idea that vast populated areas were inundated by rising sea levels is supported by these underwater buildings, areas that may have been the site of highly developed civilizations, the history of which is now lost to the sea. Although the idea of an ancient civilization spanning continents and oceans may seem extreme, it is important to take into account the many architectural and symbolic parallels found across far-flung ancient locations.
Complex astronomical alignments, sophisticated building methods, and recurring symbolic motifs like spirals, animal representations, and the enigmatic handbag carvings that can be found everywhere from Göbekli Tepe to ancient Central America all point to the possibility of widespread cultural exchange or a single ancient source as the source of shared cultural ideas. Alternative scholars occasionally conjecture about a past global civilization, one that peaked in development before being abruptly disrupted or wiped out by disastrous environmental shifts. These ideas contend that traces of ancient civilization impacted later societies, leaving behind dispersed knowledge, symbols, and architecture worldwide. They are frequently propagated by writers and scholars outside of the conventional academic community. Even though mainstream archaeology is still wary of the idea of a global civilization, new findings are constantly upending preconceived notions. Developments in satellite imaging, underwater archaeology, and geological analysis are gradually uncovering ancient sites that were previously unknown, many of which are hidden beneath thick sediment and vegetation or submerged beneath current sea levels. Every new finding strengthens the case that widespread worldwide flooding had a profound impact on early human societies, changing their habitats, causing migration, and irrevocably changing their historical paths. Furthermore, the notion of a shared memory of devastating floods is reinforced by the pervasive stories from various civilizations. The biblical story of Noah's flood, the Epic of Gilgamesh from Mesopotamia, and indigenous practices in Australia, China, and North America all vividly recall a catastrophic water catastrophe. According to these beliefs, whole civilizations were wiped off, leaving behind just a small number of people who preserved shards of their lost societies' technology, knowledge, and symbolism.
Could historical events really be recorded in these disparate legends? Could authentic recollections of environmental upheavals that destroyed entire civilizations, altered the path of humankind, and left only stone monuments in their wake have been retained by ancient storytellers? The pattern of global mythologies and scientific evidence of severe flooding events at the end of the Ice Age are intriguingly aligned, even though definitive evidence is still elusive. The fact that ancient societies had exceptional abilities and understanding of astronomy, engineering, and art is ultimately what we can be sure of. An indisputable human potential for creativity, invention, and resilience in the face of natural constraints is demonstrated by sites such as Göbekli Tepe, the Easter Island Moai sculptures, the Sacsayhuaman megalithic walls, and the submerged ruins off coastlines around the world. Perhaps the greatest benefit in researching hypotheses of lost civilizations and worldwide flooding isn't to definitively confirm or reject these concepts, but rather to remain open to new findings, to question preconceptions, and to embrace the secrets still concealed within our shared history. Compared to what we have historically thought, our past is much more intricate, linked, and fascinating.
we are reminded of how much more is hidden beneath our oceans, sands, woods, and time itself by the tales we have unearthed during this voyage across countries and cultures, which encourages continued inquiry and discovery. Thank you for viewing. Your opinions would be greatly appreciated. Which site most captivated you? Do you believe that past civilizations were indeed altered by global flooding? Or do you think a different explanation makes more sense? Tell us in the comments section below. Remember to like this video, subscribe, and enable notifications for future explorations of the biggest mysteries in history. Be inquisitive as always until the next time.